lifetime, it is a very rare privilege to stand on the same platform with someone that you met when you were 12 years old. That's how long I know the next speaker. I knew him when he attended the grammar school, the University of the West Indies when he lectured there, was a distinguished scholar. He has authored several books, and in the last 15 years, his best works, for the benefit of our children and the generations to come. He has recorded the history of the Caribbean. He has put in our breasts the quest for the deepening of our Caribbean civilization, for us to understand that we too are great nations, not just Britain, France, Germany, and the United States of America. That being of intention, we must be proud, and we must understand that we too are patriots. And hitting on the political scene as a young man, fresh with ideas, bursting with enthusiasm, to bring to our Caribbean and our Vincentian soil creative thinking, the use of the imagination, structured delivery, hard work, and the principle that, yes, we can. This nation gave birth to a son in a village deep in the countryside, and his name is Ralph Edward Gonsalves. Today, he is our Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Prime Minister.
Your Excellency, Cabinet and parliamentary colleagues, the members of the diplomatic corps, very special invited guests and members of the clergy, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is a wonderful evening that the Lord has made. We are happy and we rejoice in it. I want to make 3 preliminary points, comments, before I deliver the address which I have prepared for this occasion. The first is that this Bible on which I swore the oath of allegiance, the oath of office, and the oath of secrecy was given to me in 1981, in the month of October. That's 34 years ago. It was given to me by a very dignified elderly gentleman from Tongue Hill. You used to see him walking down in long sleeve shirt with a vest. He was a member of the jury in a case which I did at the Supreme Court. I won the case, and he came down to my office with this Bible. Told my secretary he wanted to see me. I told my secretary that I cannot see him because he had just been a member on the jury. He said that all he wanted to do was to greet me and give me a Bible. And he gave me this Bible And he said to me, read it, study it. God has given you an exceptional gift. Use it for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When I left my law office, I left every single law book to Ronnie Marks. I took one book only, and it is this. And every time I clear out from the office of the Prime Minister, anytime there general elections are to be held, I walk with my Bible. I have several Bibles before and since, but this one remains very special to me because a dignified old man gave it to me out of the goodness of his heart. He was a good Christian gentleman, and I remember him and I thank him. These elections also, and it's the second point I wish to make, are the first since I contested in 1979, and I am the only person actively in politics who has participated in every single general election since independence as a candidate. In other words, 36 years of general elections. So I have a lot of experience as to what happened before, during, and after elections, when people win and when people lose. So I am very calm, extremely calm about what is taking place. I want to assure you of that. But these are the first elections in which my mother did not vote. She did not vote because between the last time in 2010 and now, her mental condition has deteriorated and she suffers from Alzheimer's, and she can't even recognize me now. I remember her for all that she has done for me, and she is my mother who fathered me. And this morning when I left Goss at 6:30, I told the officers, Eloise was riding with me in the back, I say I have an urge to go and kiss my mother to tell her I love her, even though she wouldn't recognize. And when I came down from Goss to Connery, which is just a few minutes, the house was closed. Those who assist her in her day-to-day life had not yet opened the house. But I nodded to the house quietly and said within myself, Mommy, I love you. And I remember across this land today, not just the young people like Luke Brown who have done well, but the elderly and those who have disabilities. Which takes me to the third point. I want to say to Bishop Sonny Williams, I accept unequivocally your charge to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with my God. On December the 9th, 2015, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines elected the Unity Labour Party for an historic fourth consecutive term of magnificence and love for a better harvest in challenging times. The general elections confirmed the Unity Labour Party as the natural party of governance, and in the process enhanced its popular support across our country. In the 8 seats secured by the candidates of the ULP, the pre-existing majorities were unequivocally consolidated or increased markedly. In 6 of the 7 seats where the opposition New Democratic Party was returned, the ULP candidate succeeded in cutting the extent of the NDP's majorities. In 3 of these constituencies, North Leeward, South Leeward and East Kingston, the NDP majorities were significantly slashed. The upshot of all this, on December the 9th, is that the ULP more than doubled its margin in the popular votes over the NDP compared to the elections of 2010. There were some truly outstanding electoral performances by the ULP candidates in the election of December 2015. Among these excellent performers was Sir Louis Straker, the Terminator, Jimmy Prince, Sabota Caesar, Cess Mackey, Frederick Stevenson, Camilo Gonsalves, Montgomery Daniel, Luke Brown, Carlos James and Jomo Thomas. Even in the 2 Grenadine seats, traditional bastions of the NDP and its founder Sir James Mitchell, the ULP candidates mounted spirited performances. And in North Central, Windward, as expected, the Duffy Conqueror, the Comrade prevailed overwhelmingly. Both Camilo and the Comrade scored over 3,000 votes, with Camilo at the top of the voters' chart, absolutely. I say, however, he has a way, some way to go to reach me percentage-wise. The results of the general elections of December the 9th have placed the ULP in a much stronger political position than immediately hitherto. A prophetic echo, so to speak, of the words of one popular ULP campaign song, "We're coming stronger than ever." Objective observers have rightly concluded that the general elections were free and fair, and the results properly reflected the will of the people. The Office of the Supervisor of Elections and all the election personnel were exemplary in managing and conducting these elections with little fuss and in accordance with the Representation of the People Act and its accompanying regulations. They are to be highly commended as exemplars in upholding the sacrosanct of the individual voter's right to choose the government of his or her choice, and in further strengthening our popular democracy and its basic institutions. It is a matter of regret that a narrow band of misguided political partisans have been seeking, without justification or right reason, to impugn the unassailable integrity of the Office of the Supervisor of Elections, and to tarnish the good name of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a civilized country which has been holding unsullied general elections for some 64 years since universal adult suffrage was introduced in 1951. Unfortunately, some have allowed their ignoble and extreme partisanship to to blind them into making unfounded and false statements which clearly point toward breaches of the criminal law. But that is not an issue for my official determination and action. That is the province of the offices of the Commissioner of Police and the Director of Public Prosecutions. It is my solemn duty, however, to ensure that there is no subversion of or assault upon law and order, safety and security, and our democratic institutions. Let no one be any doubt about this. As Prime Minister, I assure the nation that the lawfully constituted authorities of the state will resist stoutly the attempt by anyone to create disorder in our land of peace and stability. More explicitly, no one will be permitted to subvert the will of the people or to take the law into their own hands to satisfy their lust for power. Those who have lost the general elections are required to abide by the rules. And in the memorable words of Sir Louis Straker, take your loss like a big man. The ULP deserves its magnificent victory because of its phenomenal uplifting campaign of love, grounded in accomplishments over the past 15 years, its vision and plans for the future, its quality team of candidates, its tried and tested quality leadership, and its organized communion with the people. The ULP never went into the gutter with the politics of personal denigration and commerce. You may run a campaign on commerce, but you cannot run a country on commerce. I repeat, you may run a campaign on commerce, but you cannot run a country on commerce. Instinctively, our people know this. They know too that politics and public policy are serious business, not part of the entertainment industry. It must be affirmed unequivocally, particularly to the supporters of the ULP, that our electoral triumph, our victory, must not in any way engender in us a sense of triumphalism. We ought to recognize that the ecstasy of victory should be tempered by the realization that St. Vincent and the Grenadines belongs to all of us, whatever our respective political party affiliations. It is inevitable that competitive democratic politics engenders political partisanship. But such partisanship must be kept within reasonable limits and be seasoned by mature reflection and action. It ought never to degenerate into naked divisiveness and dog-eat-dog impulses. Intolerance, bile, and hatred have no part to play in the mature competitive politics of our Caribbean civilization. Raw ambition, unrestrained personal agendas, and a refusal to accept the reality of the declared election results constitute a combustible mix if directed by irresponsible men and women. I offer unsolicited but honest advice to the NDP leadership that if you continue like this, it will only result in your accelerated political demise, a veritable political oblivion. There is only one place for the adjudication of complaints about an election, and that place is the court of law, not the streets. From the side of the ULP and our government, the nation is being given the assurance that we shall govern with good sense and balance. We are one nation, one people, with one destiny under one God. No one will suffer from this government any discrimination on the grounds of political affiliation or beliefs, race, sex, religion, or other basis as detailed in our nation's constitution. That is my solemn vow to each and everyone who is reached by my words. And as always, I apply in practice every day the dictum that the greatest exercise of power is the restraint in the use of that power. This practice is not a recipe for indecisiveness, nor an invitation to anyone to disregard lawful authority. On the contrary, it reflects a deep, mature understanding of human nature and our democratic institutions, which leads to wise judgments, firm yet sensitive actions. We live in challenging times, occasioned fundamentally by the external shocks of the global economic meltdown, unfair and unjust trading regimes, and multiple natural disasters of increasing ferocity due to adverse climate change globally. The revolution in information communication technology has complicated matters for governance in small states, while at the same time providing immense opportunities for empowerment and wealth creation. Internally, homegrown criminality and political immaturity by some have added burdens to our society and economy in the context of the limitations which arise from the condition of being a small island developing state. Still, our possibilities and strengths, especially our people's creativity, resilience, and capacity for disciplined work, prompt optimism for our future. The ULP's election manifesto of 2015 contains a visionary agenda stuffed with practical policies and programs to meet the extant challenges and more, and to uplift further the condition of our people's lives, living and production, through job and wealth creation, and further poverty reduction, including going to zero hunger. This visionary agenda of the ULP was thoroughly canvassed in the recent election campaign, and I do not intend to traverse that programmatic territory today. Suffice it to say that in early 2016, I shall be leading a national conversation in the communities across the length and breadth of our country on the details and efficacy of the government's agenda as reflected through the proposals of the ULP's manifesto. I turn my attention to the composition of my fourth consecutive administration. The cabinet will consist of 11 members, as you have noted here today, 8 elected representatives and 2 appointed senators, and the Attorney General, a public servant, was already been sworn in. Additionally, as you have noted, 1 parliamentary secretary is to be appointed from the senatorial ranks. The 4th senator on the government side will be proposed at the appropriate time to be the Deputy Speaker of the House. In fashioning the cabinet, I remind everyone that only 2 ministerial appointments are permitted by the Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines from among the senators. And earlier today, His Excellency the Governor General, acting under Section 28A of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Constitution Order, and upon the advice of the Prime Minister, appointed the following 4 persons as senators, namely Luke Brown, Carlos James, Deborah Charles, and Julian Francis. As we know, last Thursday, Sir Louis and the Attorney General and I were sworn in for particular positions to keep the government in place. Because as far as the Constitution is concerned, there are 3 offices identified: Prime Minister, Minister of Finance. And I took the oath in relation to those on Thursday evening, and the office of the Attorney General. And I caused to be sworn in Sir Louis last Thursday, because if for any reason I had to leave the country swiftly to do something, there will be somebody to act as Prime Minister. Or if, God forbid, if I suffer any incapacity, he would have had to act as Prime Minister. So I had to take care of every eventuality as soon as the elections were declared and the requisite information and documentation related to His Excellency the Governor General. To repeat, and I want you to note yet again, because you heard it earlier, but it's worth repeating. I have the portfolios of Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, National Security, the Public Service, Legal Affairs, and Grenadines Affairs. Sir Louis, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, and Regional Integration. Montgomery Daniel, the portfolios which he held in the last Parliament: housing, informal human settlement, lands, and surveys and physical planning. Sabota Caesar, agriculture, forestry, fisheries, rural transformation. Sesmaki, those which he had in the last Parliament: tourism, sports, and culture. Frederick Stevenson, those which he had in the last Parliament: national mobilization, social development, family, gender affairs, persons with disabilities, and youth. In the case of Camilo Gonsalves, he is Minister of Economic Planning, Sustainable Development, Industry, Internal Trade. So Louis has international trade, while Camilo has internal trade. Information, which includes public information and information communication technology, and labor. Sinclair Prince, education, national reconciliation, and ecclesiastical affairs. Julian Francis, transport works, urban development, and local government. And Robert T. Luke Brown, Minister of Health, Wellness, and the Environment. Senator Deborah Charles, as you have heard, is being appointed as the Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, National Reconciliation, and Ecclesiastical Affairs. It was important that I find parliamentary space for this woman of extraordinary quality. Senator Carlos James will be proposed as the Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly when the House first meets after the general elections on December the 29th, 2015. And Jomo Thomas, the conscious candidate who did so well in South Leeward, will be proposed by me as Speaker of the House of Assembly when the Parliament meets. Stagg and Home and Belmar will be reappointed respectively as Director and Deputy Director of Grenadines Affairs. And Beresford Phillips will shortly be accorded an important specific appointment. It is to be noted from the details specified in the schedule of the portfolios in the instruments of appointment, which will be published in the Gazette, that heavy responsibilities have been assigned to several young or newer members of the Cabinet. For example, Senator Luke Brown has been assigned the onerous ministerial portfolios of health, wellness, and the environment. And the environment in this regard relates to environmental health because it doesn't include climate change and oceans, which are in Camilo's ministry. The ULP's 2015 election manifesto proposed several major policy and infrastructure initiatives in health. The intellectually sharp and energetic Luke Brown has been given the ministerial responsibility in this vital area of the people's development. This is a bold appointment of a talented young man. I am satisfied that Luke possesses the qualities, including a mature disposition, despite his youthful years, to lead a ministry staffed by outstanding professionals. Luke Brown, at the age of 30 years, has been given a golden opportunity to provide ministerial leadership in a challenging ministry. The requisite political, administrative, and managerial support will be provided to him to succeed. In this regard, the government will appoint shortly an interministerial committee on health, wellness, and the environment, to be co-chaired by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health, to coordinate and oversee the ongoing and fresh initiatives in health, wellness, and the environment. Similarly, Camilo Gonsalves has been allocated the newly designed Ministry of Economic Planning, Sustainable Development, Industry, Internal Trade, Information, and Labor. His detailed portfolio subjects include additionally commerce, information communication technology, public information, private sector development, investment, climate change, and oceans. It is the intention of the government to establish shortly a broad-based National Economic Advisory Council drawn from highly qualified personnel from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the region, and our diaspora and elsewhere. The NEAC must not be confused with NESDEC. NESDEC represents a series of interests which were directed towards the subject of poverty alleviation. The NEAC will be drawn from appropriate professionals from business and labor. The central role of the National Economic Advisory Council would be to provide valuable advice and guidance to the government on the economic development of St. Vincent and Grenadines. Jimmy Prince has been assigned the Ministry of Education, National Reconciliation, and Ecclesiastical Affairs. Jimmy, Luke, and Camilo are high-quality individuals who have performed extremely well in the recent general elections. They join their other elected colleagues who have already chalked up impressive achievements in their respective portfolios. A cursory perusal of the scheduled subjects within the Prime Minister's portfolio would indicate that I have divested myself of several areas of ministerial responsibility, such as economic planning and development, statistics and census, private sector development and investment, including Invest SVG. I am determined to begin the gradual transition to a new generation of leaders. Of course, as Prime Minister, my coordinating role of all the ministers will continue to be pivotal. In other words, while I'm giving more responsibilities to a lot of the younger and newer members, it doesn't mean that the old man is going out to pasture. Sir Vincent Beach, who has served this nation so faithfully and well for over 40 years in public life, has offered to demit his post as consultant and advisor to the Minister of National Security by the end of this year. I thank him for his outstanding service. Sir Vincent, along with my permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security, has had the basic oversight day-to-day of the ministry of the past 10 years, in addition to the policy advice that both of them, Sir Vincent and the permanent secretary, have offered me. I am already discussing as his possible replacement a young man with tremendous experience in the field of national security, intelligence and white-collar crimes. Again, I am in quest of transitioning to a new generation of leaders. I promise you that in the campaign, and I have to carry out that promise in government. Because I don't want, when 2020 comes around, that you're lining up at my office or my residence to say, comrade, you have to do another run. Because if you come and do that, it's not going to be Ask Ralph. I'm going to say to you, Ask Eloise. In January 2016, the Cabinet will appoint the persons to sit on the boards of the various statutory entities and other public enterprises, without in any way compromising on experience and wisdom. I will be pushing for talented, fresh faces of merit across the political divide. I know some of our supporters wouldn't want to hear this, but I have to look for talented, fresh faces of merit across the political divide to oversee the operation of these statutory boards and state-owned enterprises. Similarly, there will be some changes in personnel in our missions overseas. The process of renewal must be embarked upon with the necessary and desirable focus and urgency. After all, why have we had the education revolution if not to find spaces for some of the younger men and women who have come through the system and whom we know are of quality? We have to provide that. It does not mean that we are forgetting experience. Not at all. But we have to have a proper blend. And we have to ensure that we open it up for younger persons of talent. So as I conclude, I want to make a few final comments on the existing political situation in our country. I repeat that in the recent general elections, the ULP won 8 of the 15 seats with majorities ranging from comfortable to overwhelming. That is a fact. I reiterate that in terms of popular vote, the ULP more than doubled its victory margin of the 2010 general elections. That is a fact. The ULP today, on the basis of free and fair elections, is in a stronger political position than in 2010. That is also a fact. The NDP leadership is entirely delusional in thinking that they won the elections. The CARICOM, Commonwealth and OAS election observer missions have already issued their preliminary statements confirming that the elections were free and fair and reflected the will of the people. The NDP, through its delusional political lens, insists, against all the evidence and right reason, that it won. A political strategy based on a fiction, nay, a monumental falsehood, is bound to fail in any modern, sophisticated, information-driven society like St. Vincent and Grenadines. I urge the opposition to cease their futile attempts to destabilize the country. Politically they will attempt, but they can't succeed. And I am urging them to abandon the cockeyed view that a loss is a win, and that the minority of seats and the minority of votes empower their party in a democratic society to run the country instead of the ULP, which won the majority. If the NDP considers even erroneously that it has a case to be answered, the proper place to seek that answer authoritatively is in the court of law. This lawless charade upon which they have embarked on the streets will be strongly resisted by this democratically elected government. This is a matter of high principle for us. Let no one doubt the resolve of the government and the Prime Minister on this matter. I fully appreciate that Mr. Hon Eustace and some of his leadership are at the end of their political careers. Their recent defeat hastens the termination of these careers. 20 consecutive years in opposition brings pain and anguish. But these human feelings and emotions must not prompt any responsible leader to permit those feelings or emotions, personal vainglory, and the loss of opportunity to sacrifice the national good on the altar of that which is unworthy. A loss of face ought not to trap one into a loss of good sense. The wisdom of Psalm 37, verses 14-15, provides apt insights. The wicked draw the sword and bend the bow, but their sword will pierce their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. And the same Psalm 37 verse 23 teaches that if the Lord delights in a man's way, he makes his steps firm. Though he stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I know that my heavenly Father is upholding me with his hand. Finally, I reaffirm that my government will continue to govern in the interest of all Vincentians. I know that we have our labor love t-shirts, but after the elections, we have to think, because since the country belongs to all of us, labor love necessarily must metamorphose, must evolve into one love. One love. And anytime anyone comes to you with anything, say one love. And I mean that sincerely. I want to thank you for your support. I thank Almighty God for his abundant blessings. And may Almighty God continue to bless us all. Thank you.